Elon Musk has just been announced as the first person in history to reach nearly $500 billion in net worth, about $487 billion as of October 2025. And as expected, people have very polarizing viewpoints about this news. Against Musk, some have said, "This is ridiculous and very evil. What a terrible person, knowing he could stop world hunger and chooses not to. Karma will find him." Another reads, "Think of the injustices we could correct if we taxed billionaires and it wouldn't affect their lifestyles one bit." Another reads, "It should be structurally impossible to become a billionaire." And last but not least, "This is not an earnable amount of money. This man is a vampire to the economy." But in defense of Elon Musk, others argue, no one is poor because someone else is wealthy. Why are people so envious of other people's money? The rich having money is not the reason you don't. He earned it and provided a lot of value. He deserves it. And last but not least, this is what jealousy looks like. Instead of working harder, people complain. It is better to light one candle than to curse the darkness. Clearly, the reactions are divided, and I do want to dive into them more, but just not in today's episode. For today's episode, I want to explain what having a $487 billion net worth really means, because judging from the comments, not everyone understands what net worth actually is. And then, for fun, I'll also take a look at his astrology chart to see whether extreme wealth like this was written in his destiny or just the result of timing and luck. As always, with the Taurus Treasure, I like to give my 2 cents on topics of finance, business, and the economy. I am not a professional expert on these matters. I just share my research and insights. Always consult a financial professional if you need actual advice. So, what does net worth really mean? One of the first things I learned while studying finance is the concept of net worth. Let's define it. According to Google, net worth is the financial value of all an individual's or household's assets, what you own, minus their liabilities, what you owe. In formula terms, the equation looks like assets minus liabilities equals net worth. Assets can include things like cash, investments, property, or ownership in a business. And liabilities are debts like mortgages, credit cards, or student loans. If you own more than you owe, you have a positive net worth. If your debts are greater than your assets, you have a negative net worth. So when we apply this to Elon Musk, his net worth of $487 billion doesn't mean he has that money sitting in a bank account. Instead, it reflects the value of his assets, primarily his stakes in the companies he owns. But where exactly does the wealth come from? Elon Musk is connected to several high-profile companies: Tesla, SpaceX, X formerly Twitter, Neuralink, XAI, and The Boring Company. His wealth comes from owning large stakes in these businesses. His most notable company, Tesla, currently has a market value of about $1.4 trillion as of October 2025. Now, Musk doesn't own all of Tesla. He owns roughly 12 to 13% of its stock. That makes his stake worth well over $150 billion, making it the single biggest contributor to his net worth. On top of that, Musk has large stakes in SpaceX, which itself is valued at over $150 billion, along with his other ventures. Add them all up, and that's how you reach the nearly $500 billion net worth Forbes is reporting today. The key point is this: Musk's fortune is mostly on paper. It's tied up in the value of stocks and ownership stakes. If Tesla's stock price falls, his net worth drops. If it rises, his net worth goes up. He doesn't have $487 billion in liquid cash sitting in his pocket. Going back to some of the comments, some people were arguing things like he could stop world hunger with that money, or this amount of wealth is evil. But hopefully now you can see that most of this fortune is not cash he can instantly spend. It's a reflection of the market value of his companies, built by investors and consumers who choose to put their money into his businesses. This doesn't mean Elon Musk doesn't have access to enormous wealth. He clearly does. But it's important to understand the difference between net worth on paper versus money in the bank. And those defending him are right in one sense. One person gaining wealth doesn't mean someone else's bank account is automatically shrinking. It's not a zero-sum game. People buy Tesla cars, invest in Tesla stock, use the X platform, or back his other companies voluntarily. That's what creates the value. Whether you think Elon Musk's contributions are good or bad, his wealth comes from people seeing value in his technology and products, and therefore choosing to give his businesses their money. So now let's take a detour and look at the astrology of Elon Musk's chart. He was born June 28th, 1971 at 7:30 a.m. in Pretoria, South Africa. I found this information out on the internet, so I'm not sure if this is 100% accurate. But nonetheless, his chart gives him a Cancer sun, Cancer rising, and Virgo moon. In other words, a double Cancer with Virgo practicality at his core. At first glance, his chart doesn't scream billionaire. He doesn't have the classic Capricorn, stellium, or Taurus placements that are often associated with material accumulation. But there are some interesting features that show how he channels energy and builds systems that generate massive value. Starting with his Aries midheaven, which the midheaven is the career point in the natal chart. His midheaven in Aries shows the entrepreneur archetype, which is pioneering, risk-taking, and self-starting. Aries energy thrives on initiating bold ventures, and Musk is famous for diving into industries others see as too risky. Then he has a Jupiter in Scorpio in the 5th house. Jupiter in Scorpio is probably the closest thing to showing wealth in his chart. Jupiter is the planet of expansion and abundance, and in Scorpio, it's tied to transformation, deep resources, and other people's money. When it's sitting in the 5th house of creativity and ventures, this can manifest as wealth from speculative investments, bold projects, and powerful partnerships. Then he has his 8th house, ruled by Aquarius. The 8th house governs shared resources, investments, and collective wealth. His 8th house begins in Aquarius, the sign of technology, networks, and innovation. This speaks directly to building value through futuristic, tech-based systems, which is exactly what a lot of Elon Musk's businesses or businesses that he's connected to are about. The 8th house being ruled by Aquarius doesn't so much show personal accumulation of money, but creating structures where collective money flows in, like his businesses Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, which are all industries of the future. And then going to his Virgo moon. The Virgo moon adds analytic drive, detail orientation, and perfectionism. It's less about wealth and more about constantly refining systems, which indirectly leads to financial growth. So as you can see with his placements, a lot of his placements don't scream money and billionaire, but these placements give him the tools and the skills to create businesses or to create business partnerships that allows him to bring in so much wealth by default. I'm actually kind of glad that his chart doesn't show the typical money-making placements, because it just goes to show that anyone can accumulate wealth and accumulate money. Post about the top 5 placements or the major placements that people can have that shows wealth, and it can be discouraging when people don't have those placements. But if you use Elon Musk's chart as an example, none of the placements scream billionaire and scream you're going to come into a lot of money, except maybe his Jupiter in Scorpio. Other than that, all of his other placements don't really speak to money, but here he is now almost the richest man in the world as far as we know, and has hundreds of billions of dollars in net worth. Also, another thing, when we look at wealth, it's tempting to pin it all on transits, but charts don't hand out billions of dollars. They show tendencies. Elon Musk's placement suggests someone who builds bold ventures, uses collective money and technology, and takes high-stake risk for transformative gain. The actual fortune comes from the deals he makes, partnerships, and systems, which are the structures of his companies. In fact, you could argue it's not Elon Musk's chart alone, but also the charts of his businesses that carry the financial energy. After all, businesses are living entities with their own astrology. Elon Musk's personal net worth is just a reflection of what his companies are worth on paper, and I'll dive deeper into the natal charts of businesses because, as I said, they are like their own living entities, and I will discuss that more in future videos. But in conclusion, while nothing in Elon Musk's chart screams world's richest man in the traditional sense, his placements show why he channels massive energy into innovation, risk, and collective ventures. His wealth isn't about sitting on piles of cash. It's about assets, systems, and the futuristic structures he's tied himself to. In other words, it's as much about the charts of his companies as it is about his own.